It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, folks, in January, Chief Robert Ferdinand announced that he was going to retire after 23 years. He's my guest on the Sam Lesante Show. He's been on the show a number of times with Mayor Barletta as well as Mayor Iannuzzi. And of course, you know, it's a challenging job. Anyone who is in law enforcement today, believe me, folks, hats off to them, because it is a whole different ball game out there. Anybody who is in law enforcement deserves a lot of credit from the community. Well, Mr. Ferdinand, you're going to pack it in.
Yep, Sam.
You shocked us. You know, you're gonna hit the road. I'll see you hitchhiking up there on 924 with a little hat on. Goes, I'm going west. You know.
It could be.
Bob, just a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you know when you decided to become a policeman. You know, what you went to Moravian College, was it?
Yeah.
And what? Tell me a little bit about you back then.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I never, like when I was younger, had plans to be a cop. That wasn't my lifelong dream. I worked at Keystone Job Corps Center as a senior residential advisor for a couple of years. Got interested in law enforcement from there, started taking law enforcement courses. One thing led to another. Became a probation officer with Lehigh County down in Allentown for a couple of years. A job opened here while I was still taking courses, and I was like, yeah, police, I could do that. So I applied for the job, got it, started as a patrolman, and led, for a couple of years just doing standard patrol. Jimmy Joseph.
Jimmy Joseph.
Yep. So I started under him, got promoted to a patrol supervisor position, did some more of that, supervising a shift of patrol officers. Then went on to be a detective for maybe 8 years. Got a lot of experience doing some very important cases, serious investigations, and then, Mayor Barletta appointed me as chief in 2005. That's what I've been doing since.
When you look at 23 years ago and decided to go into police department, what were some of the challenges back then, 23 years ago?
Kind of the same things.
Not to interrupt, but how many were on the force at the time when you went on?
I think it was 18 when I first started.
18, okay.
Yep.
All right.
We'd have sometimes dangerous calls. You'd have bad domestics. You'd have traffic accidents. You'd have every once in a while a robbery, but it was very infrequent at the time. It was really a big deal when there was any kind of a robbery like that. And you'd have a lot of thefts. There were always a lot of thefts. It was a busy place, but you were dealing with the same kinds of people. The certain well-known names in Hazleton that you deal with them, and then further on in the generation. So it's like you knew that you were dealing with a certain element. You knew the people involved. Over the years, with the ingress of people from outside the area, with a big city mentality, the way things were there and the way crimes are, the way they look at life.
The question that comes up a lot of times is, people always say to us, what happened? What happened? How did they allow this to happen? Because when and look, it's not. And we've said this a zillion times. It's not only Hazleton, okay?
Right.
So let's put that. But when the police department or the law enforcement saw an element coming in, okay, some people think that you guys did nothing about it, okay? They let it happen. They just, there was the rumor that Mayor Quigley brought all the bad people in, which was furthest from the truth, okay? Poor Mayor Quigley, just trying to help people out. But did you see those things happening, and was there anything that the law enforcement could do about it?
That's a very good question, and people have all different kind of perspectives on that. But the truth of the matter, the real truth is that you cannot single people out just because they look different. They look like they might be trouble. If they actually commit a crime, you act on that. You arrest them. Of course, people can come here looking like anything because it's a free society, and that's the price we pay for freedom, is that you can move about freely. So some people would say they'd move from a bigger city like New York and say, I heard that Hazleton is a really good community. So they start moving here, and they may be decent people that want to make a better life for themselves. So they show up here and it's like, wow, this is good. Tell all their friends about it. They tell their friends, they start coming here. Well, out of a huge population of people like that, you're going to have a lot of troublemakers because they're coming from an environment where that's the way they grow up. Whether it's crime and being used to that and thinking nothing of it because they have no stock in their neighbors from a big community like that. Hazleton, pretty much everybody knew their neighbors, so now you have a new element there that doesn't have the same interest in their community. They might want to take care of their families, but not necessarily worry about the neighbors, and that takes years to develop. And I think over time, you're going to see that again, and more of a sense of community, but this is a transition period and highly important. But to answer your original question, the police cannot just identify somebody as looking different and say, you're not coming into our town. It's not possible for anybody. So we're faced with dealing with the crime as it happens and try to do preventative things as best as possible. But really, there was no planning for the future, certainly not with the budget, where you can say, we see this trend occurring now, we're going to add officers now so that we have this prevention so that it deters the troublemakers from ever coming here. But the problem is, there's never really enough money in Hazleton to plan for those kinds of things and add the assets that were needed, and that's what requires, I don't know, every former mayor has worked on that problem and will continue to do that, and I really think it's going to take the innovation of many great thinkers adding to the, like thinking about that problem, thinking how can we look for funding resources to add police so it doesn't continue to degrade. And that's not to say anything about my officers. Those guys are fighting a hard job every single day, looking for problems, arresting who they can, keeping those kind of people off the street. The problem is more and more people just drive in. It's just, you see thousands upon thousands of cars coming back every day, some from Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia, wherever they come from. But contained in those cars that look just like every other car are certain troublemakers, that have the freedom to be able to travel back and forth. So you do traffic stops. Sometimes you find things, drugs or whatever. Sometimes they come in, might live for months and laying under the radar, maybe causing problems, but not coming to the police direct attention. Those things go on despite the best efforts of the police. You can have 10 patrol cars patrolling around, but really, everything that's being done is not out in the open. So it's a big problem. It's a war that has to be fought by the police against drugs and gangs and things. It has to be for the safety of the people in a certain municipality. But throughout the country and throughout the world, it's a war that never will be won. The best we can do is make it as safe as possible for anybody in a given area. And it is, like you said, it is a problem not only in Hazleton, but in society. And really it comes down to ways of thinking. I think we've turned into a more superficial society. When we were young, our parents had a sense of values, our parents were present in our lives. Now it's transitioning, through television, through music, just a superficiality that has to be dealt with in society so that kids grow up with a sense of principles, not just like money means I can buy this and I'm going to get money to do that in any way possible, no matter who it hurts. This is the problem, and that's something that has to be dealt with.
When I come back from break, I want to talk about Frank Rizzo and the lay of the land and what he did, and and of course you have the ACLU now, and you have how much does the law restrain our police department, any policeman for that matter, or woman, from doing their job? Okay, folks, I'm talking to Bob Ferdinand, the city police chief, who is retiring in March, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks, 24/7, SSPTV.com. Thank you so much, folks. Over 100-some thousand hits. It's unbelievable. Go to our website. You'll see what I'm talking about. All of our shows are archived, especially the new show we're doing called The Girls. That's a fun show, folks. Anyway, the official water of SSP TV, Tomhicken Mountain Spring Water, folks. If they don't have this water where you buy it, ask for it. It's the water that Starbucks uses. And of course, folks, besides taking my PRN omega-3s every day, I do take a couple shots of Mona V. My good buddy Dan Pizzala will be more than happy to tell you about this stuff. It's good stuff. Bob, you should drink some of this stuff. It makes you strong and handsome like me. Bob Ferdinand's retiring, folks, from the police department after 23 years. Came as a surprise to a lot of people. Going back to setting the stage, and when you grew up, when you were a kid, and mother and father, the dad would, if you did something wrong, you knew you were getting a strap, you knew you were in trouble, and you didn't want to. You made sure you weren't going to make any mistakes, because when dad looked at you and mom looked at you with a cross eye, you were in trouble. Now what happens? I mentioned Frank Rizzo. Frank was a very strong police chief that tolerated nothing. And the city felt good with Frank, even though sometimes they feel he did things that weren't right. Well, now, what happens when, the police department says, look, when they see something, you come down on the real hard to set the stage, to send a message out, so that people that are seeing this saying, wow, we better not screw around in Hazleton, because those cops are not going to tolerate anything.
There's a lot to be said about having that kind of a strong presence there and just saying, look, we're going to be tough on crime like that. I believe in that. I think that's what we've done as a police department. I think anybody around here will tell you that Hazleton police officers are very aggressive. We make a lot of arrests. We look for stuff, go out of our way to look for stuff, and do find a lot of stuff. Whether it's a traffic stop that leads to drug arrest or other, people having warrants, there's a lot of aggressive police work being done. We do that. That needs to be maintained. Now, the point here is that how far can you go with that being aggressive without trampling on individual civil rights? And this is an important question. I believe in a free society. That's what makes us different than China, Russia, like any other country really, where people are free to do what they want, but not at the expense of injuring others, and that's where crossing the line and breaking laws comes in, and you have to be very aggressive. For instance, what we do, we're very aggressive against gang members. Anybody committing crimes that have gang involvement, we're very aggressive with. We have an officer assigned to the FBI Safe Streets Task Force, bringing federal charges and federal assets to play into the thing, expanding the power and the size of our police force effectively. So what happens is, guys who are gang involved and want to use drugs and guns, especially weapons and violence, to further the ends of the gang are going to be dealt with very harshly. So when we're talking any kind of crimes like that, charging them federally and getting them the maximum sentence through the federal system is a very, very strong message to that criminal element that, man, they don't screw around here in Hazleton. Yeah, you can come here, there's a big drug market, maybe you can make some money, but the penalty for that, if you get caught, is that you're looking at a very long sentence. That's deterrent enough that we see a trend toward moving to outlying areas that maybe don't have the assets that the Hazleton Police Department has, and they can operate maybe a little bit more under the radar without police scrutiny. So essentially, we're doing what New York City has done with a strong approach against gang activity, is really start hammering them. Get the officers knowledgeable about gang involvement, identify the main players, which we have identified lots, let's just say lots. And we know the players involved. That's a constantly evolving thing. We take data from all officers and keep intelligence on these guys. So when something bad does happen, we kind of know the direction to look in. And that's helped in very a lot of investigations, serious ones, even homicides, and that's highly important to keep up on that stuff. And I have a department that really does that very well.
Is legislation doing their job? Meaning, when they say, I'm going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law, okay? Now, what sometimes people, even the fact that you hear these horrendous things that some of these people do, when you see them on our news, okay, or if you see a picture of them in the Standard Speaker, okay, that maybe they beat up a child or they sold drugs, destroyed people's lives, etc., they're smiling, they're smirking. Like, that's big, no big thing. I'm going to get out in a month or two. So, and then you're saying, I'd be hanging my head in shame and be ashamed of myself, okay? But some of these people just smirk at you, laugh at you like it's nothing after you've heard what they've done. So now is legislation saying, look, we're going to tell you this, you do this, you're going to get so many years, you're doing this. So when you prosecute a person to the fullest extent of the law, are the legislators doing their job helping the police department?
Legislators who create the laws, I think, are doing their best, generally speaking, to create the laws that law enforcement can use to charge people appropriately. I think there always has to be some kind of a latitude for judges to look at individual circumstances, whether extenuating, mitigating, or aggravating circumstances, to look at an individual case and say, okay, this guy did this, he hurt a kid, however, these are the other circumstances that kind of make it, his intent wasn't there and it was more accidental. So you can offer a little bit more leeway even though a kid was hurt. Or you can look at somebody who is just mean-spirited throughout their entire life. They have a long criminal record, they have a course of conduct over the course of many years, and they're just bad people. So you look at them a little bit differently than normal course of things. So the legislation is there and the laws are there for the most part, but a judge has to be able to look at the individual case and look at all the factors involved and say, well, I'm going to really stiff you and give you a higher sentence or mid-range. So that's very important.
You ever do the legislative process? Do they ever meet with police chiefs or district attorneys or whatever to discuss these matters?
Sure, that occurs. And I think legislators try to do the best they can with the knowledge that they have. Like, very few people can look at every possible factor that weighs on that. So you try to create laws that address most things. Sometimes you don't realize until after the fact that maybe there's a loophole in here, somebody's going to get away with something, or maybe this law is overly restrictive and people who shouldn't be, whatever the word is, who it shouldn't apply to, it actually applies to and get in trouble unnecessarily. There's a lot of that. So you kind of fine-tune laws and you amend them over the course of time, and I think everybody's generally involved in trying to do the right thing.
Folks, I'm talking to Chief Robert Ferdinand, packing it in March. 23 years, young guy. He wants to retire. What is going on here, folks? We come back. Let's talk about what are the qualities of the next police chief. Should the chief be from our own area? And what is his thoughts? What will he leave? What will he be suggesting to the mayor and to the city of Hazleton to make it better? He's not going away. He's just retiring. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. You can get me at sam@ssptv.com. Thank you for the emails, and folks, appreciate your comments. My guest is Robert Ferdinand, Chief Robert Ferdinand, police chief of the city of Hazleton, decided to retire in March. Okay, so let me ask you this. Question everyone's asking, you're doing great. Everything's, you're doing a great job. You've been on the show a number of times. All of a sudden, boom, you decide to retire. What happened? Did Joe get you mad, or I was going to say.
No, I worked well with Joe. Mayor Iannuzzi, and he and I over the past year really put a lot of stuff in motion. I got to give a lot of credit to Mayor Iannuzzi. He instituted a lot of stuff. The surveillance camera system, he made that a reality. That's a huge thing. It really is. He listened to me and to the officers saying, we need a rank structure. We're a paramilitary organization. It thrives on a structure. Just like the military, you can't just say, okay, well, you're kind of in charge of this. Everybody has to answer to a next person up the line. Yes, it costs money, of course, but the thing is, we had gone for how many years without a solid rank structure. We had a couple of supervisors there, and some of our higher ranking officers retired, so that left us with this huge vacancy there that really had to be filled in a number of positions. So again, I have to hand it to Mayor Iannuzzi for working with me very closely on that rank structure and carrying it out. That was hugely important. Now, after having seen that we have the right people in place, we're on the right track, I did as much as I could, putting us on the right track. I decided that after 23 years, we're on a good course. It's a good, solid foundation. And I really felt that this is a good time. There are other things going on in my life that I'm looking forward to carrying through that I haven't had the time to do. So there's a balance there of, do I go another couple of years, or do I say this is a natural point? And it just seemed like a good time. It seemed sudden, but really I've been thinking about this for a long, like the right time to do this. Do I stick it out longer? Is it a natural time? And it's a good natural time for Mayor Iannuzzi. He's just elected. He has 4 fresh years ahead of him. And he has a chance to choose who he wants as chief of police and and carry forth on the foundation.
happy with you.
I believe so.
And I don't, because
Yeah.
he was definitely happy with you. But and I admire you for doing that, because it certainly helps a person in
Yeah.
that position. Very quickly, there's 3 questions I want to ask you: qualities of police department, and should we appoint one of our own, and what you'd like to be remembered by as a police chief. Okay, so let's take the first one. Qualities. What are some of the qualities that you feel the next police chief should have?
First, you have to have intelligence. You have to know the job, intelligently apply your experience to what you know, and look at the needs and look at the big picture, and then draw your focus down to the smaller picture, and then keep expanding it back and forth. You have to have that ability. You have to have the ability to remain even-keeled, to deal effectively with your people. You can't fly off the handle and scream at people, you know, when they screw up. Everybody makes mistakes. We cannot expect that we're going to have perfection in any field. So you deal effectively with the people, apply, you know, disciplinary action if you have to, commend people when they deserve it, and they deserve it almost every day. Tell people they did a good job. You have to, police chief here has to look at all of that, not be crushed by the weight of every decision that has to be made every day. So for that, you need an even-tempered kind of a person. You can still be tough, but be even-tempered without flying off the handle. You have to, I think that's a key factor. And really, for Hazleton, we have plenty of people there that have the experience that can carry forward. I personally don't think it's necessary to look outside the police
Are
department.
you going to make any recommendations to the mayor?
You know, the mayor is perfectly capable of making his own decisions in that regard. We have talked previously about who in our police department has certain qualities, and there are a lot of good people there.
There's no question about it.
He absolutely has
yeah.
at least a handful of people that are perfectly capable of carrying on.
And I trust Joe, Mayor Iannuzzi. I think he'll listen. I think he's making some wise decisions. It's a tough task. There's no question about it. I mean, he said on this show it was as honest as he could possibly be. People sometimes don't like that, you know, because it's like, who liked you, etc. That being said, so you feel that we do have enough qualified people to hire a police chief within? Okay.
Absolutely, and I got to say, whoever steps in, whether it's somebody from the department or somebody from the outside, they're not walking in with a magic wand. You have 40 officers, you have a limited amount in your budget that you can work with. This has been the problem. You can't, you know, you can wish that you can do as much as you can with police, but really you can only put so many people on patrol, you can put so many people in narcotics and investigation.
Bob, I want to ask you this question. We have a minute and a half left. What would you like to be remembered by as the police chief? When someone says, "Oh, when Chief Ferdinand was here," what would you like? What legacy would you like to leave?
That every day I came in and treated people like I think they deserve to be treated. I tried to do what's fair. I tried to lift everybody else up as much as possible, whether it's through promotions or encouragement or whatever. I try to make people better, whether it's citizens or people that we've arrested. You know, there's something in everybody, a part of good in there, and I try to bring that out of everybody. That is what I want to be remembered by.
And I saw some of your motivational things that you sent to the police, your patrol people, which is another aspect, you see, because you do need motivation. Mm-hmm. You need to be, you know, I know this is your job, and sometimes it's good for the boss to say, you know, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. I appreciate that. You know, just those things sometimes, because it's a difficult task, particularly being a police person today. Hats off to all of them. State policemen, you know, city police, you know, township police, constables, they deserve, you know, it's a whole crazy world out there, as I said on the show with the constables. Well, Bob, I want to wish you the best. I'm going to miss having you come on the show as the chief of police here in Hazleton. You've certainly been always fair to us at Local News 13, and we appreciate that very much. You've been transparent. You never had, you know, we needed you. You were there. We have your cell number, and you've always responsive. I wish you and your family the best, and wherever endeavor you have, only the good things are going to happen to you.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way. Thank you so much for everything.
Folks, Bob Ferdinand's packing it in, but he's retiring. He was not told to quit. No pressures. It's something he decided to do on his own. So let's put the rumors aside. Joe did not say, "You're out." He didn't say that. We'll see you next time.